Here's a 2004 Highlander. You're going to understand why people buy these things. The guy bought it years ago for $4,900. He's put almost 100,000 miles on it. Now, in all those years, he had to do some work, but it really isn't the vehicle's fault. The fault is he lives in Massachusetts. So, control arms would rust off, brakes, suspension parts, because of all the stinking salt they use on the road in the winter. It's going to eat them up. Now, interesting enough, the body doesn't rot away because it was all done correctly by Toyota. When they made these things, even this older one, they put them in zinc-based primer, electrostatically charged. The bodies, they don't rot away. They're fine. It's all the ancillary stuff like control arms that are made out of steel, brake rotors that are made out of steel. Everything that's made out of steel, of course, is going to rust. That's the one advantage of a real top-end car like an Audi. Their control arms and stuff are made out of fancy aluminum. Aluminum doesn't rust, so they will last longer in a corrosive environment. You're going to find that all the steel parts will eventually rust. So, whoop-de-doo. The last 3 years, he said he probably spent a couple of grand having stuff done. You think about what he paid, you know, 4 grand. You got over 100,000 miles. We're going to check it out, make sure it's still going. I'm sure it is, but the computer will tell us the truth about that. Now, as we look under the hood, you see all the bugs. They got a lot of bugs here, too, and they eat up your paint. V6 engine, Toyota's electronic variable valve timing, which works great. But it's a 3.3 liter engine with a rubber timing belt. I did recently have a timing belt and the water pump changed, which is a good idea because, lo and behold, this is one of the few engines Toyota ever made that's an interference engine. The 3 liters weren't, the 3.5 liters weren't, but the 3.3 liters were. Who knows what they were thinking about? They don't make them like this anymore. The only company that I have a beef with is Honda today, because Honda's still making V6 engines with timing belts that are interference engines. Everyone else has timing chains, but no. They got some weird idea. I guess they don't want to spend the money swapping their productions over, but these are very good engines. Change the timing belt every 100,000 miles or so, and you're not going to have any problems. But I do have to tell you the truth. Okay, I've been working on cars for 55 years, and I started working on Toyotas in the early 1970s. You know how many broken timing belts I've seen on these V6 engines? None! And I've seen people with 350,000 miles with still the original timing belt. They're made that well, but if you're not a riverboat gambler, you might as well change the belt and the water pump every once in a while, just to make sure bad things don't happen to you. But they are that well made. Okay, it's a Toyota, it's running smooth. I can hear the fan belt making a little bit of noise. Who cares? It's been raining, it's wet, right? Original AC compressor, it still works. The alternator is original. Most of the parts are still original, you know? And since it's made in Japan, you know the quality is good. Now the seats are starting to fray from age. This is a work vehicle. You can see lots of stains from work-related things. But when you pop the seats back, hey, there's all kinds of room for storing stuff. Now it's got 214,000 miles on it. It's all-wheel drive. Does the system work? Of course it still works. It's a Toyota. They make good all-wheel drive systems. Now, personally, I'm not a fan because I don't like the extra expense and the worst gas mileage, but he lives in Massachusetts. A lot of people like it for getting around in the snow. Now, he uses all-season tires, and he said with the all-season tires and the all-wheel drive, it's fine. He doesn't bother putting snow tires on. You get a lot more grip with all-season tires, all-wheel drive, than you will just all-season tires. That's just common sense. Most people, if they have just two-wheel drive, they'll put snow tires on the drive wheels, right? But in this case, he just keeps the all-season tires on. You don't have any problem driving around Massachusetts in the winter. So we get out the brand new Autel scan tool. It's all plugged in. We'll diagnose it. It's loading itself. Read the VIN. We'll do a fault scan. Go through the whole system. It's an old car, so it's going to take a little while. So we'll look around. The steering wheel's still in good shape. Windows, everything works. Heat, AC works. Look, it's still got the original Toyota with a CD player and a tape deck. And they still work. It's a sunroof, but it's raining. As you can see, lots of lights are on, so we're probably going to get a bunch of codes, even though it's still running pretty good. And you can see there's quite a few codes, so let's start up here. Now while we're waiting for the scan, it's slow because it's an old vehicle. It's a 2004. These armrests always wear out. That's typical. You can see it's a work vehicle. It's been to Hades and back, but it's still going. And since all these lights are on, I expect some codes. So far, there's 14 codes. You can see he's got the old radio, but he's also put in a Sirius XM so he can listen to music he wants to listen to and not be limited to old tapes or CDs or even older an AM FM radio. Be patient with these old vehicles. It's been a few minutes and now it's 63% done. These old cars had much slower computers, so interfacing with them does take more time. Now we're up to 72. We're getting there. Cadillac inefficiency, bank 1, bank 2, bank 1, bank 2. So the catalytic converter is not working all that well. The ABS system, the right front speed sensor circuit, the left front speed sensor circuit, the right rear circuit, the left rear circuit, and the ABS control system. So the ABS system, it's messed up, as is the airbag system and the sliding roof communication stuff. Well, it's closed, so we don't care. So we'll check this CAT code out here. And the machine itself gives you a big explanation of the codes, tells you how the system all works, and tells you that the trouble areas are the catalytic converter and the front exhaust pipe, gas leakage, airflow sensor, oxygen sensors. There's lots of things it could be. So let's start it up. Look at the engine ECT data. Now, as I look at the live data, I can see the oxygen sensors are working. The vehicle's running in closed loop. It's not open loop, so those systems are working. Now, if the customer wanted me to, with that nice Autel machine, I can start doing tests that shows what part to test, how to test the wiring, how to test the cats. It's got a freeze frame oscilloscope. It's got a wave generator. So you can figure it out. And it has the information on it to figure it out. But in this case, the guy doesn't give a crap. You know why? Because it's running perfectly fine and it's older than 15 years. And in Massachusetts, when they're older than 15, they don't do emissions testing anymore. It runs perfectly fine, as I was telling him, at a customer in Houston with the same exact vehicle, even the same color. How bizarre was it? And his check engine light kept coming on. And it was for inefficient catalytic converter. So for 4 years, he'd bring it to me, I'd reset it and get it so he could get it inspected, because at the time, it wasn't 25 years old, right? I'd reset it, get it to go good enough that he could pass it for the emissions. Well, after driving it 4 years the way it ran fine, and the light kept coming back on for him, he came the 5th year. And he said, you gotta set it so I can get my car inspected. So I plugged in the machine, the code was gone. This is 5 years. He did no repairs to the car. He just switched from one Exxon station to they opened a Shell station closer to his house, and he was lazy as could be, so he went to the closest gas station, and that better gas burnt more efficiently, because that code means the catalytic converter isn't working at 100%. Sometimes as little as 94% efficiency, it'll trip that code. But if you live where you got to get it inspected, yeah, on these things, they build the catalytic converters into the exhaust manifold. It's a V6, there's one on each side. Since they're both reading bad, you're talking about big money, and since it runs fine, does anybody really care? No. And as for the ABS, well, the sensors aren't working, and the modulator itself. Now, it could be the modulator and the sensors, or just the modulator, and then it trips the sensors because it's messed up and it thinks the sensors are wrong. But it doesn't really matter, because on these, the ABS system is called fail-safe. When the ABS stops working, you get to normal, non-ABS braking. If he slams the brakes on now real hard, he can lock the wheels up. So if he knows how to drive, he won't get into trouble. The modern cars, the real modern cars, they have it tied in with vehicle stability, all kinds of control stuff, and it creates a mess when they break down. But an older one like this, hey, you still feel like you're braking okay. It's just you don't have anti-lock brakes, so you got to understand. If you got to stop fast and it's wet outside, you'll have to pump the brake. So you see the ABS light, and a guy like me says, well, you want to spend thousands of dollars possibly for a new modulator and all this work? Or if you're happy with the way it goes, drive it without ABS brakes. Got this modulator assembly here and the labor to change it out. You'll probably do like him and just drive the thing around. I'll take it for a little ride. We got a look in this case. And we're looking. You can see around these, there's no blind spots. Now, it's a Highlander, so it is relatively high. You got it. So we can go over a little bump here, not have to worry about things dragging. And yeah, it's old, but hey, it still goes down the road. Sure, the tire pressure monitoring system doesn't work. The ABS system doesn't work. The vehicle speed control doesn't work. The airbag doesn't work, and the check engine light is on, but it still goes down the road. Conditioning still works. Well, we got clearance to the right, but no clearance to the left. All right, we have an opening. Here we go. We'll floor it. Now that V6 engine sounds great, still shifts like a dream, even with 214,000 miles on it. And truthfully, it is a blessing that it's over 15 years old, because now he doesn't have to do the emissions testing, so he doesn't have to fix all these stupid lights that are shining and flashing. Still rides pretty good, corners pretty good, makes a nice work truck. You can see he works the heck out of it. You're high enough up in the air that you can see where you're going, and being all-wheel drive, hey, doesn't get stuck in the snow, and he's only using all-season tires. And it's got 214, but I mean, I've seen these things with 514,000 miles on it. Yeah, they might shake, rattle a little, maybe a couple speeds of the fan on the blower for the AC don't work anymore, but hey, they're still going down the road and they're still blowing cold. So here we got an old 04, and yeah, the bugs have eaten the paint up. They're very acidic bugs here on the East Coast. I don't know what it is. And yeah, lights are flashing. It still runs perfectly fine. It just goes to prove that PL 430 codes for inefficient catalytic converters, often they don't affect the running of the car one iota. If your catalytic converters were actually bad, what happens is they clog up, and then your temperature gauge will start running towards the hot, and when they get bad enough, you'll only be able to go a certain speed. Like it'll go 50 miles an hour and no faster, and when it's really clogged, it'll go like 10 miles an hour. But that's not the case with this. You can see it's still, the engine runs like a sewing machine. The transmission still shifts good. So these old things, hey, let's just say they don't make them like they used to. Today we got an 04 4Runner. It's 20 years old. It's only got 73,000 miles on it, so this guy doesn't drive much. Now you can see he really takes care of it, because even though he's in Connecticut, it's not rusted at all. Either that or he did a really good job of hiding it. We'll look underneath, and no, it's in excellent shape. Realize, of course, these are all made in Japan, and they are full frame. Now, they're solid built, and you have to pay for them. Even 20 years ago, he bought it new for $33,000 plus. And people wonder, how come they're so expensive, even used? Because they can last so long. They got solid frames. Toyota does a pretty good job of rust-proofing them. Even 20 years ago, they were doing a good job rust-proofing them. Heck, even 30 years ago, they were doing a good job rust-proofing them. My silicone isn't rusted, yeah? It's not something that you really got to think about with these, like with a Ford or a GM or a Chrysler, that the wheel wells are going to rot out. These don't particularly have that problem. Like I still got the original wheels. Yep. Now, if you had a GM product, for example, those wheels would be pitted, they'd have holes in them, right? But no, they really make these things in Japan. As we look under the hood, you see one of the reasons these things are so reliable. It's their V6 engine. These engines have really good reliability, and this is a new enough one that it doesn't have the stupid rubber timing belts and metal chains, so you don't have to think about anything. Toyota says 2025 they're not going to make these anymore. They're only going to have turbo 4s, and I think that is a big mistake, Toyota, because these are heavy vehicles, and if you put a 4-cylinder turbo, it's not made for this. It's just made for EPA gas mileage ratings, which is a bunch of horse manure. You get a turbo car and run it on a dynamometer, it gets great gas mileage. You get a turbo car and run it on the road, it gets horrible gas mileage if you drive fast, if you tow stuff, or if you're just driving a heavy vehicle. It doesn't make sense. They've had these things forever with the V6s. Well, actually the original ones had 4s and 6s. They couldn't sell many of the 4s because they couldn't get out of their own way. Now sure, the new ones are turbo 4s and they'll have more acceleration because of the turbochargers, and they have a hybrid version too, but guess what? They're going to wear out faster. They're not going to last as long as these do. This engine doesn't burn any oil. You get a 20-year-old turbo 4, I guarantee you that baby's going to be burning oil. Extra pressure, no engine can take that kind of pressure. Over time, things wear out from the extra pressure. A normally aspirated engine is much better. And the V6, of course, has V6 torque. So it's great for pulling stuff, carrying itself around. You just lose a lot with a turbo 4. And from my own personal experience, this is a 4-wheel drive system. You can turn it on or off. Turbos don't work so great with the 4-wheel drive systems. They do have a tendency of wearing out transfer cases and stuff faster. Everything that a turbo does, more power, it does it by higher RPMs. You wear everything out. the four-wheel drive system, the engine. These things work perfectly fine. They'll go 5, 6, 700,000 miles. Why are they getting rid of these? Another EPA gas mileage nonsense. But really, why don't they just offer a 6 and offer a 4? And you know what they'd find? Everybody would be buying the 6s that knew something. Now everybody's praising Toyota, and rightfully so, for going to hybrid cars, saying, we don't believe in battery electric cars. Hybrid cars are it. Now everybody's buying hybrid cars, right? But Toyota, please don't make a mistake and get rid of this engine. There are people that want this engine. And if you find your sales starts going down because you're putting a 4-banger on what used to have a 6, blame yourself for getting rid of one of the best engines you ever made. Doesn't make sense to me. They did the same thing this year with the TRD Tacoma. They only offered a 4-cylinder turbo. They got rid of the V6. That's why my son bought one the year before, a Tacoma TRD, because he wanted the V6 and 4-wheel drive. He doesn't want a 4-cylinder turbo. And there's a lot of people actually that are that way. And I think they're a mistake getting rid of an engine like this that can run forever just in the hope of getting better ratings for their gas mileage. I mean, it's a big mistake if you ask me. But be that as it may, you check the interior. Look, it's still in great shape. The cloth seats last the longest. You got lots of room in the back seat, lots of room in the trunk. Start up. Toyota starts right up, no problems. There's your 4-wheel drive system. You can set it any way you want electronically. Black and chrome and black backward gauges, everything you can see. Now, of course, it is a modern car, but not too modern because, look, it has an actual emergency brake. Not that electronic crap the new ones have. 20 years old, it's still got a bunch of USB plugs on it. And it's got a 12-volt, 120-watt power receptacle there. 20 years old, doesn't have much on a steering wheel, just your stereo stuff and some modes you can change. It's nothing fantastic. In the back, they can open and close, which is nice. So let's get my fancy scan tool out. We'll hook it up. Diagnostics, do an auto scan, and there's no trouble code, so we'll look at live data. So start her up. Up she goes. No trouble codes. Short-term fuel term is 0. Bank 1 and bank 2. Air fuel ratio. The airflow meter is good. The equivalence ratio is 1.001. Now it's 1 is perfect. It goes between perfect and 1/1000% off. So they make these things well, right? Like you said, the guy's been driving this for 20 years. Man, he's only got 73,629 miles, so he doesn't drive it much. So I really wouldn't expect anything to be wrong, so let's take it for a road test. Before I get going, look at the nice dash. Well, that's because it had that sticky Toyota dash. And years ago, the Toyota dealer did replace the entire dash. So if you have one and it goes bad, whine at Toyota. They will replace them at certain times. They didn't make them right, and a bunch of these, they were sticky. And this is brand new, and it was years ago, and you can see that what they replaced it with isn't sticky at all. Backup camera, because he replaced the system and put a backup camera system in place. Why buy another car when all you gotta do is buy something like this? Away you go. Now you got a backup camera, right? Now this is an actual 4-wheel drive vehicle, so we can fly over the giant bump, no problems whatsoever. So got the original struts on it because, hey, it's only got 70-something thousand miles. And look, on these horrible roads in Rhode Island, hey, it still goes really smooth. Like I say, they really know how to make these things in Japan. Yeah, you're going to pay for it, but they can last an awful long time. At least with these V6 engines. Like I say, the Turbo 4s, not a big fan. Little turn signal flash on the mirror there. Still nobody to the left, so here we go. It gets up and goes for a heavy vehicle. Smooth shifts. Anything you expect. Now, of course these things are gas hogs. It's a big, giant, heavy vehicle with a big frame, and I don't care. They could put a Turbo 4 in it. It'll still get horrible gas mileage. I found the same thing with the Tundras, only they went from a V8 to a V6, and the gas mileage with the V6 was really very little than the V8, maybe 2 miles a gallon on the highway better. And when towing stuff, it's horrendous. I just met a guy with a Tundra V6. He pulls a food truck. He said he gets like 4 or 5 miles a gallon pulling the food truck. So much for their turbocharged V6 instead of the V8 that the Tundra had. And I feel the same thing about this. Now, these had a V6 and they're downgrading it to a Turbo 4. Big mistake, Toyota. Because look at this thing. It looks fine, it runs fine, and it's 20 years old. I wouldn't be surprised to see this thing going down the road 20 years from now. So the case of they don't build them like they used to, well, this is a prime example of it. You could find somebody that didn't drive much like this guy, and if they're ever going to sell it, he's not going to sell his because he loves it. But you find maybe an older couple or somebody that's got one, it's got low mileage, jump on it, baby, because it's going to hold its value. It's a solid frame. Anything on it can be fixed, and they can run 400,000 or 500,000 miles and more easily. So there you have it. Now you know why these things cost so much money, because they're so well made that a 20-year-old vehicle runs the same as it did the day it came off the factory floor in Japan. The Japanese just do a better job building the stuff. There's no arguing that. And yeah, you're gonna have to pay money for one of these things, but hey, they can run forever. And the one advantage of these being made in Japan is you might have read about some of the Toyota trucks and SUVs having rotten frames in the past, right? Those were all American made ones which had frames which were made by an American company. The Japanese ones made in Japan did not use the American frame. So if you see J on it, you don't have to worry because they made them right and they don't rust. It was the American made vehicles that had the American-made frames that, of course, the Americans screwed up, try to save a nickel. They didn't coat them right, and they all rusted. This thing lives on the East Coast in Connecticut. There's no rust on it because they made them correctly. You can find one of these. Hey, and if you really like them and you want a new one, hurry up and buy one, because 2025, they're all going to be Turbo 4s. And to me, that's a downgrade. You can't beat these things. Why change something that works? It's beyond me, but hey, that's corporations for you. All right, today we're talking Toyota RAV4s, 2014. RAV4s, the last few years, have been the best-selling SUVs in America, so they're pretty well made. But would you buy one with 160,000 miles? Now you can see body-wise, it's in excellent shape. And as we open up the door, this baby was made in Canada. The Canadians do a pretty good job. When they're made in Canada, I don't have any qualms. But as you can see, it's got 160,511 miles. Is that too much? Often not on a RAV4, but let's check this one out. Now, he bought this one at a dealer for $14,000. That's the price that they're going for. If you price a brand new one, especially a hybrid, now this isn't a hybrid, but if you price a brand new one, I've seen hybrids around here going for $56,000. You're saving a lot of money buying a used one, but of course the question always comes up, is it going to hold up? Does it run right? Well, let's start with the engine. Now, he wanted a good, comfortable car that gets decent gas mileage, that's going to last a long time. So he opted out for the 4-cylinder engine. Now these 2.5 liter 4-cylinder with Toyota intelligent variable valve timing are pretty much bulletproof engines. This one's got 160,000 miles, doesn't burn oil, runs perfectly fine. I expect that from a Toyota engine. Now, those old ones years ago had problems burning oil, but this is a completely redesigned engine. They don't have that problem, and I don't see these having problems like some of the new Toyota V6 engine is. Sometimes older, like this 10-year-old one, is better than newer. So you got a great 4-cylinder engine, and it's teamed up with a pretty smooth 6-speed automatic transmission. It doesn't have all the complexities of a hybrid car or a turbocharged car. It is neither. These things can run and run and run. He wanted something for his wife and kids that could go a long way. But he wasn't interested in buying a brand new fancy RAV4 for $55,000. So far, I gotta say, he made a wise choice. Plus, not only did he opt for the 4-cylinder gasoline miser engine, but he's also just front-wheel drive. I have many viewers with RAV4s, they're only front-wheel drive. Up north in the winter, they just put snow tires on the front. And of course, the big advantage of front-wheel drive is this. You got all-wheel drive. You got to replace all 4 tires at the same time, or it screws up the transmission, the transfer case. These, you could replace the front tires in pairs, or the rear tire in pairs. You don't have to buy all 4 tires if one tire goes bad. And that's something to think about in terms of tires and expense over the years. Now it's 10 years old and it's a Toyota, but hey, the AC still works, transmission's just fine, everything else works. And maybe a 10-year-old car, but it still gets 31 miles a gallon on a highway. Who can complain about that? Of course, if you get the plug-in hybrid, you get 50-something, but then again, that's $50-something thousand. This was $14. You can buy a lot of gas with $40,000. Just let's face the facts. He wants me to go through it, so I'm trying out this new launch scanner. This is an interesting scanner. We'll turn it over, you can see what it is. It is a Launch Creator 2.0. It's the T because it's for Toyota. So here we go, it's up and running. We'll do auto detect. It's scanning it in. Now it's loading it. Now it didn't work, so here's my third and last try I'm gonna do. Now for some reason it has to download software, which I have no idea why, but let's see what happens. I've already downloaded everything. Now I have found that some of these devices will not work unless they are close to wireless network. And in this case, my wireless network is inside that hole in the garage, so we'll see what happens. Well, now it's downloading the software, and I can see one problem with these type of scan tools is if you are using them and you're not in a wireless network, a lot of times they don't work. So keep in mind, if you don't have a wireless network, a scan tool like this is probably not for you. Well, now it's installing the software. Let's see if it's going to work. Well, it's scanned okay, so let's see. All right, so far it's working. It's got the VIN number, Europe and others. It's a RAV4, 2 ARFE gasoline engine, 2014. Shows the kilometers. Well, in this case, this made a mistake. It said it's got 160,000 kilometers. It actually has 160,000 miles. So it's wrong with that. It's a Smart Key 4-cylinder. Okay. All right, now it's doing a health. As you can see, the scan tool goes through lots of systems in the car. So this is not just some basic simple code reader. It's got a lot of information it can pick up on. And it came up with engine code, ABS code, tire pressure monitoring, combination meter code, 5 body control module code, 3 codes, driver door mode, power source control, 2 codes, navigation system, 6 codes, master and slave have problems. Now for a Toyota, that's quite a bit of code, so let's start looking at them. Now this was a used car, probably sat for a while. Okay, so the engine code is startability malfunction. Typical on Toyotas, if they sit, the battery doesn't work right, or the keyless remote has a problem that'll do that. That's a code that means just about nothing on any Toyota. The tire pressure monitoring system has a code for transmitter not received, so you really don't expect a 10-year-old car with 160,000 miles to have working tire ones, so you don't really care. Combination meter says there's open in the turn signal circuit, but they work perfectly fine. Now there's a whole bunch of communication codes. Lost communication with ECM, TCM, AFS. Lost communication with C control module. Now, that's often a classic sign of the battery went bad. It sat for a long time, which would also cause a startability function. We're going to erase all these codes and take it for a road test. And the entry and start problems are also communication loss. That could easily be from previous work or the battery going bad. Master switch to driver's side door has a malfunction. Yet everything works when I turn them on and off. Navigation system, the Bluetooth module malfunction. Things are disconnected. Okay. Hardly anyone uses a Toyota navigation system. We all got cell phones that work perfectly fine. You got to update those things, yada, yada, yada. No one cares about this. So a lot of communication stuff. We're going to turn the car off. Put it so just the idiot lights on. We'll clear the codes. No, clear them all quickly, except there is an open in the front passenger side electrical antenna circuit. Who cares? But we really don't care about that one out. All the other codes that could be really important codes, they've all disappeared. Now, as you can see, you can do all kinds of things. But we're going to look at all the data first. Air fuel learn value is 0, meaning it's running perfectly. It's not having to adjust anything. Now, this scan tool is different than most of my scan tools because you can see the data is red. This is normal data. It's red. So unlike most of my scan tools, black is good and red is bad. If red was bad, that would mean this car was running like crap because all the data is red. That's just the color that they're using. You can see the misfire count is 0. Shows the battery voltage. That's good, 14.75. You get all kinds of information. The scan tool has a lot. We're only at the C's. Now watch. Let's just go through them just for kicks. We're only in the E's. Look at the data this thing could do. And of course, it can graph them too if you want to. Push that and you get a graph of the thing. There's the graph. We'll rev it up a little. Advance the ignition a little as we revved it up. And we'll continue on. It's just wild. Now, you can see it takes a little while to fill them up. This is a lower end scan tool. The chip isn't super fast. So if you go really slow, you see the data comes up. But if you go too fast, then you got to wait a little. That's just the way it is with cheaper scan tools. They're not going to refresh as fast as a more expensive one. But still, look at the data. I mean, it's insane. Look at the data that this thing gives up. we're still only on the S's. Get transmission data, still going, all this data. And of course you can read the codes, clear the memory, read a data stream. You can actuate various things. And we go back. There's special functions too. Reset learning value. Reset memory. Reset your service light for the oil. Match the throttle. So I do have to say, it's a pretty good scan tool. It does a lot of stuff. Now, as I warned you, unfortunately, I found that this thing has to be connected to the internet. So I had to move the car closer to my garage so I could get to communicate back and forth and could download stuff. If you're living somewhere where you don't have an internet connection, the scan tool is not for you. Doesn't have to be all that fast, but it's got to be able to communicate from what I've seen, because the first 2 times I tried it didn't work. It kept saying, is it plugged in? And of course it was plugged in. I'm not an idiot, right? But as soon as I moved the car next to where my internet booster was for the outside, then it downloaded and it worked. So you got to use these babies where there's internet. Now, it's completely touchscreen, so there's no buttons to break. And we'll see what happens over time if this thing holds up. Sometimes these screens break, sometimes they work perfectly fine. But not having the buttons, well, that's one less thing to break down. A lot of them have buttons and touch screens. It doesn't make any sense to have both. Why pay for the buttons when you don't need them? Now, before we take it for a road test, we'll kind of look through the vehicle. Everything's still in good shape, no cracks. The seats are in phenomenal shape, they're comfortable. And of course, there's tons of room for car seats in the back. And it is an SUV, so got a reasonable amount of room in the back. As we walk in, you can see there's a lot of room back here. And thank goodness it does have a spare tire, so you're not stranded if you get a big flat in the middle of nowhere. A lot of vehicles don't even have spares anymore. And it even has auto shut on it. So let's start her up, take it for a spin. Put her in reverse. Well, the backup camera's okay. Not the greatest resolution. It's an old car, so it doesn't have side and top view or anything. But it's usable. Now, it might have 160,000 miles on it, but drive, even though it's a 4-cylinder, it idles smooth as can be. So as we drive down the road, I'll adjust the mirror so I can see the back. Just shifted. Didn't feel it shift hardly at all. 160,000 miles, transmission still shifting pretty smooth. Pouring around a little. Gone a long way in these RAV4s. Now, this is a 10-year-old one. But if you go back in the day of the early ones, they rode like crap. This thing is 10 years old and it still rides pretty well. You want speed, go ahead and buy the $56,000 one. But hey, for $14,000 that he paid for this, we'll make sure there's nobody behind us. And we'll do our little takeoff test. Here we go. Not a race car, but still shifts smooth. Runs perfectly fine. We're doing 50 now. This is a great transportation vehicle to haul your family around in. You want to pass somebody, we want 40, we'll floor it. And yeah, not a race car. You know, it took a little while to get going to 50, yes. But, hey, it gets you there. It's even got lane departure that still works. Hey, I went over the line without using my turn signal. And it knows, it's warning me. 10 years old, still works, hey. Brakes still work perfectly fine. The downshift of the transmission is good. Still idles like a dream. You don't need a 6-cylinder engine for a smooth idle these days. The 4s are fine. It's warning me, and you can see, look, I'm driving with no hands. It's not pulling, shaking, still in excellent shape. So now we've come back from a road test, and the only code was the one that stayed. That says open in front passenger side electrical antenna. All the other codes are green, and other codes came back. So, I'm assuming those codes are because either the battery went bad or it was low at one point and been replaced. Nobody reset the computers because none of those codes came back. Only that the antennas are short. And who cares? Who even uses radio antennas these days? So what did we learn? Well, this Launch Creator Elite 2.0T for Toyotas only seems to be a pretty good scan tool as long as you're using it where you have internet access. Because when I tried using it at the end of the driveway where it has no internet access because it doesn't beam out that far, it's not like a cell phone, it doesn't have a card in it, so I got to use the house internet, it didn't work. It would do stuff and then say you're not plugged in. It wouldn't let me access it until I got close enough to my antenna in the garage that it would work. So you got to use this where you have internet capability, wireless somewhere, right? It doesn't have a card, so you can't put a card in it. It has to use the internet that's lying around. Now, that works fine. When you put it on settings, it'll show you the internets in the area. You click on the one you want and put in the password, and it works fine. But you got to have that. Just realize that. Otherwise, pretty good scan tool for Toyotas and Lexuses. Same company, same software. Now, as for the car itself, 160,000 miles, 4-cylinder engine, front-wheel drive. Excellent vehicle still. got tons of life in it. You don't necessarily need a V6. Now sure, you buy a brand new plug-in RAV4 Prime, get 50-something miles a gallon, you could drive it on electricity alone, 45 miles, but it was $40,000 more than what he paid for this. So put that in your pipe and smoke it when you're thinking about what am I going to buy, what do I want to spend, and realize a 10-year-old Toyota with 160,000 miles, if it's been taken care of, even minimally, can still be a great car. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.